Hey everyone, it's your boy IV here. On our last episode of our Nightmare series, episode 1 covers the details of what to expect in the Nightmare dungeons in Dry Steppes. In today's episode, we'll be traveling up north to cover all the Nightmare dungeons available in Scosglen. Just an FYI that this is not a tier list, and my goal here is to provide my honest opinion in hopes that I can help you get a better understanding of what to expect from each of these Nightmare dungeons. Also, a reminder that with the release of patch 1.0.3, XP gained from killing monsters in Nightmare dungeons as well as the XP awards for completing these dungeons have increased. You can now teleport directly to the entrance of the dungeon by activating your sigils and clicking on the dungeon icons on the map. With these changes, Nightmare dungeons should continue to be the best thing to farm moving into Season 1. The developer note also says that they're looking to increase the monsters in elite density to the endgame contents in early Season 1. Please keep in mind that all my findings were tested as a barbarian in tier 51 through 60 dungeons. If you're using a different class and come across different findings from what I've shown in this video, feel free to drop me a comment below as it could potentially help me decide which class to go with in Season 1. In today's video, we'll be covering these Nightmare dungeons using a 5-star rating system. Mob density is based on the overall size of the mobs and how compact these groups are within the dungeon. Mob count scales with the size of the map, so a smaller map can have a 5-star rating even though a larger map can have a higher number of mobs. Map size will range from 1 star being the smallest to 5 stars being the largest. Power level rating is based on the time it took to clear every single monsters in the dungeon, as well as completing all objectives, events included. And last but not least, glyph level rating is simply based on the time it took to complete the dungeon. Some of the icons you'll see in the next few slides are shown below. The orange objective icons shows either the turn-in location from pickups or a midpoint event such as activating the 2 pillars, killing a mini, or destroying a structure before going into part 2 of the dungeon. The red highlighted area covers the portion of the map with objectives of slaying all enemies. Starting off on our list today, we have Sunken Ruins. This dungeon is mainly packed with ghosts and zombies. The dungeon has an insane amount of mobs and the density is also extremely good. This might be my second favorite dungeon to run to power level all my characters. For the map size, it is slightly above average, but the objectives are very easy to complete. After completing part 2 of the dungeon, Thomas, the final boss, will spawn near where the last skeletal structure was destroyed. Finish him to complete the dungeon. Some of the things to watch out for are ghost mobs. They often spawn in a large group of vengeful spirits, which can be extremely dangerous if you get hit by all of the arrows. And let's not forget that the bloated corpse fiend can perform high damage charges and can explode. Next on our list, we have Raethwind Wilds. This larger sized dungeon is filled with bandits and wildlife. The mob count here is above average, but don't be fooled by the large sized monsters such as Wildwood and grizzly bears. They take up a lot of space on your screen and could be misleading to be considered as good mob density. What I am confident to say is that there are a good number of elites here compared to all the other dungeons, and that the objectives are very easy to complete. Part 1 of the dungeon requires you to slay all enemies, but this part of the map is extremely small. Based on the number of times I've ran this dungeon, it seems like it's a hit or miss for the mob count and the density on this side of the map. Part 2 covers 80% of the map, but you will encounter some downtime running between each group of mobs. However, because the objectives are so easy to complete, I gave this dungeon a 4 stars as a glyph leveling rating. Be sure to watch out for the thorn beasts though, as each of them will shoot 2 spikes at a time and running into a group of them can be devastating. The tusk chargers should also be on the top of your hit list as their high damage charges can potentially one-shot you. Fail's Den is a large sized dungeon where you encounter many spiders and wildlife. This dungeon has an insane number of mobs and a lot of elites. It's filled with spiders and maggots, making everything very easy to kill. My only complaint for this dungeon is that getting through all the doors and activating those runestones as part 2 of the objective can be very annoying. But overall, this is a very nice dungeon to run strictly for leveling purposes. It's also a great place to fill up your inventory as well as farming additional sigils. Aldurwood is the smallest dungeon you'll find in Scosglen. For the mob count, it's also a hit or miss depending on the run you get into, and the mob density will scale off of it. In most of my runs, the mob density is decent, and because the objectives are so easy to complete, this could be a great place to power level your characters. That is, if you have enough keys for it. Similar to Raethwind Wilds, be sure to watch out for the Thorn Beast and Tusk Chargers. Demon's Wake is a large-sized dungeon overran by Fallens and Skeletons. The only reason why I gave this dungeon a 4 stars for the mob counts and a 3 star for the density is because random parts of the map has a chance to spawn an extra group of enemies. The downsides to this dungeon is that part 2 can be very time consuming as it requires you to slay all the enemies before fighting a final boss. But at least the boss will spawn near where you've killed the last monster on the map. Because part 2 of the map is an open area, it can be difficult to group everything together, as shamans are ranged enemies that can resurrect other monsters across your screen. Always keep an eye out for the Fallen Lunatics and the Thunder Shamans who can cast a devastating lightning attack onto you. In my opinion, the mob density barely made it to a 4 star, and if it wasn't for the chance of spawning additional mobs around the map, this rating would have been lower. As for the last on our list, we have Whispering Pines. Similar to Aldurwood, the mob count and density here is also a hit or miss depending on the run you get into. Part 1 of this dungeon simply requires you to kill 2 gatekeepers. This part of the map is filled with Thorn Beasts, Spider Host, and Wildwoods. Part 2 of this map is filled with demons, so make sure you put the Vile Lunatic and Vile Shamans on top of your hit list. I gave this dungeon a 2 out of 5 for the glyph leveling rating due to the size of this dungeon as well as the way part 2 of this map is structured. In order to slay all enemies, you will need to make a full circle around that side of the map before getting to the final boss. As always, I hope you find my Nightmare series helpful, and that I was able to provide some useful information regarding these Nightmare dungeons in Diablo 4. I wish you all the best, and good luck in getting some of those biz drops along the way. And until next time, iV, we out.